Okay, so now I'm going to do the box method. Again, it's up to you. If you already know you like the box method, just watch it as a refresher. If you're not sure, watch the first one and then go and see if there's another method that works better for you. The box method is very visual, and so this helps some people visually. For some people, there's too much going on in the box method, and so this doesn't work for them. So I'm going to use problem number 8 as my first problem from the notes on 5.4.8. Okay? So our problem is 12x squared minus 15x minus 27. Make sure, yeah, I got that. Okay? First things first, don't forget GCF. You don't want to do the box method if you haven't taken out the GCF. It gets very confusing. So I'm going to take out a 3, and that's going to leave us with 4x squared minus 5x minus 9. In all methods, you're going to have to use the magic x. If you're doing a trinomial, you're going to have to do the magic x, which is a times c and b. Okay? So this is going to be negative 36 up top, negative 5 down the bottom. I already did this prior to here, so if you're not understanding magic x, go back and watch that video again or come see me so we can kind of go through it or get you some more practice. Sometimes magic x is just about practice. So negative 9 and 4 work here. Negative 9 times 4 is negative 36. Negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. Okay? All right, so now here's how the box method works. We are going to create a 2x2 box. Now, if you use the box, oh, let me try this again, see if I can get this to work nicely. If you use the box method for foiling or multiplying, this is just backwards. Okay, so we're going to start with stuff inside the box, and we're going to pull stuff outside the box. Let's see if it fixes itself. Oh, it did. Nice. Okay. It doesn't fix straight lines, though. I don't know why. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in the box. Now, this is where you have to kind of get some practices. And so for the non-visual learner, this becomes very confusing. For the more visual learner, this follows very easily, okay? So I'm going to look at negative. The first term goes in the top left box, okay? And in that case, it's 4x squared. So 4x squared goes up here. And our last term, negative 9, make sure you take the sign with you or this won't work. Negative 9 goes in the bottom right-hand box, which some people would call the last box, okay? Now, what goes in the middle here? You have to know that you're going to put x's there, and you're going to get those numbers from the magic x. So our magic x is negative 9 and positive 4. It doesn't matter which one goes where. Okay, so I'm going to put in negative 9 and positive 4. And I have to admit to you, I'm not overly visual, so this is a little bit more difficult than my favorite method. My favorite method is grouping. That's just because that's the way I think. I'm very linear, and grouping is linear. This is more visual, and so this is a little bit harder for me. It works perfectly well, though, for some people. So what I'm going to do now is, before we took what was on the outside and multiplied, now we're going to see what's in common, and we're going to pull that to the outside. So at the top row, what is in x and negative 9? That's the same. And what is the same as x? You can't put 2 into either of them without, we're dividing. We can't put a 2 in there. We can't put a 9 in there, so it's just x. That's all we do. Okay? We go to our next row, and we look at 4 and negative 9. Well, nothing goes into 4 and negative 9. We just talked about that. And the negative 9 doesn't have an x on it. So in this case, the greatest common factor in those two boxes is a plus 1. So I put a plus 1 here. Okay? That's what we're doing. We're pulling out the greatest common factor. All right, so then I look at my first column. Well, in my first column, I have a 4 in each, so that's the greatest common factor. And I also have an x in each, so that's the greatest common factor. Taken care of. I look at my last column, and I see what's the same in both of those. Well, what's in the same is a negative 9. Now, you do have to mess with negatives sometimes. You have to be careful here. There is not an x in both boxes, so that's not a GCF. And this is our answer. We look at our left side, and that's going to be x plus 1. We look at our bottom, and that's going to be x minus 9. I don't know what's going on, why it's deciding to do this now. So I'm just trying to ignore it. Be careful, we also factored out a 3 at the top. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll write that 3, that GCF that I factored out, I'll write that down first, but that needs to come down. if this would stop, and go on the outside. Okay? And that's our answer. That's our factors. Okay? For some of you, you're like, whoa, that's a whole lot of work. And for some, you're like, oh, that just made it clear. All right, let's do another one. So that was number 8 from the notes. Let's do number 9 from the notes. Number 9 is 9y squared plus 30y plus 25. Looking for a GCF as I'm writing. I'm thinking, is there any GCF besides 1? Well, at first glance, 9 and 30, I was like, oh, it's going to be 3. But then I got to 25. Well, 3 does not go into 25. And so there's nothing that 5 goes into 30 and 25, but it doesn't go into 9. So the greatest common factor here is 1, so we don't have to be concerned about it. Okay? It's up to you whether you start your box or your Magic X first. So if I wanted to, I could start my box. Okay, and in my box, remember, the first term goes in the top left, last term goes in the bottom right. So I can put my 9y squared here and my 25 here. I know y's are going to go here, but I need a number. That number comes from my Magic X. My Magic X is A times C on the top, and in this case it's pretty big, it's 225. And in the bottom is 30. Now I happen to do this on my graphing calculator. I did y equals 225 divided by x, and then I went to second graph or second table and I looked at my table of values. After I saw it, I was like, oh, of course this is what it is. But sometimes we're just tired or we don't think of it, and that's why it's nice to have that backup if we need to. 15 times 15 equals 225, and 15 plus 15 is 30. So that's what goes on the rest of our box, is those 15s. Okay? Now we're just going to pull out our GCFs. Top row GCF. What goes into 9 and 15? 3. What else is the same in both of those boxes is the Y. In the second row, 15 and 25, the greatest common factor there is 5. I'm going to put plus 5 to remind myself it's a positive. There's not a Y in both boxes, so I can't pull out a Y. My greatest common factor in my first column, what goes into 9 and 15, is 3. There's also a Y in both boxes, so that becomes a Y. Then 15 and 25, I pull out a 5, and it's a positive 5. So my answer here is 3y plus 5 times 3y plus 5. There was no GCF that we pulled out besides 1, so we don't have to put that out front. And if you really want to be fancy, you could do 3y plus 5 squared. I don't know why it keeps making a circle there. Okay? And let's do number 10. Number 10, again, is a trinomial. Sorry, I was looking at it and I forgot. 21x squared, happens sometimes when you're old, minus 70x plus 56. I'm looking at these huge numbers and I'm really hoping there's a GCF. So my GCF here, if you haven't figured it out yet, is 7. I'm going to just kind of make an arrow down here to remind myself that 7 needs to come also when I do this, okay? So I don't forget. So what does that leave me with? That leaves me with 3x squared minus 10x plus 8, okay? Again, you can do Magic X or box first. It's kind of up to you. I don't need that top anymore. I'm going to deal with what's in the parentheses. I made a new trinomial by factoring that out. So I'm going to make my box. I'm going to do top left is my first number. That's 3x squared. And see, I noticed my 7 isn't far enough down, so I'm going to move that even further down. Okay? And then my bottom right is my last term, and in this case it's 8. Okay? There's always going to be an x in these. The problem is I need to know what number is attached. Remember, a times c up here, b down here. We don't look back to our original. We stay with what we already factored out, that's 7. To make our lives easier, we factored out that 7. We have a 24 here and a negative 10 down here. If that happens, we know that we're going to have some negatives to deal with here. And in this case, when I went through, I figured it out was negative 6 and negative 4. Negative 6 times negative 4 is positive 24, and negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. Now this is where you have to watch yourself when you're doing this on your box. So negative 6 and negative 4 is what goes in those remaining boxes. I will tell you this, the first column and the first row never take out a negative. In the first column and the first row, never take out a negative. We'll figure out the negatives in the second ones. Okay, so let's look at our first one. Our first one, 3x squared minus 6x. Don't take out a negative, so I know I can take out a 3 and an x. That works. Now, this is where you got to be careful. I have a negative 4x and an 8. Well, if I can't take out a negative in the first, it's going to have to come out in the second. So I'm going to take out a negative 4 here. I almost said 2. You want to take the greatest common factor. 2 is a common factor, but it's not the greatest common factor. And when you go back and do your check, when you have negatives, always go back and do a check, okay? Now my first column, like I said, we don't take out a negative, so we're just going to take out an x. In my second column, we have a negative 6 and a positive 8. We have not taken care of this negative 6 anywhere, so it's going to have to come out here. Oh my gosh, I don't know what that is. Negative 6, and what goes into 6 and 8? 2. Okay? Now, I do a quick check when I have a lot of negatives going on to make sure. If I were to multiply this back, 3x top row times bottom row, 3x times x is 3x squared. That works. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Good. Now, here's where I check to make sure my negatives are right. I do a negative 4 times a negative 2. That gives me positive 8, so now I know I'm good. Okay? So we had that 7 kind of hanging out waiting. 3x minus 4 and x minus 2, and that's my solution. Okay? So that was number 10. So we did 8, 9, and 10. Now what I want to do is 4 terms. I have to tell you, people always seem to get nervous with 4 terms. 4 terms is actually easier because somebody already did the magic x for us. That's what I like about 4 terms. So the 2 problems I'm going to do are from the same notes. It's just up above. Number 6 is the first one we're going to do, and that's 8ax minus 6x minus 12a plus 9. Always check for a GCF. At first when I looked at this, I was like, well, it looks like 2 could go into everything, but then there's that 9 at the end. 3 goes into 6, 12, and 9, but not into 8. So our GCF is 1, so we don't have to worry about that. We do not have to do a magic X when we have 4 terms. We can just make our box. It's almost like somebody did the magic X for us. And we just put the numbers in like we did before. Okay, first term is 8ax. That goes top. Last term is 9. But look at the middle term. We have 2 of them already, so we don't have to do a magic X. We just put them in there. It doesn't matter which one goes where. You'll get the right answer either way. We do the same thing that we did before. GCF. Again, watch your negatives. Our GCF of 8 and 6 is 2. Again, don't take out a negative in that first column or the first row. We're going to deal with that in a second. So 2 goes there. What else comes out of that box? Well, the same thing in both of that is an X. That's our GCF for the top row. The next row, we're going to have to deal with a negative. So we're going to take out a negative here. But what goes into 12 and 9? 3. There's nothing else in common between those, so that's our greatest common factor. Now let's look at our first column. We already took care of the negative on the 12. It's on that 3, so we don't worry about it. But what goes into 8 and 12? 4. What's the same in both? An A. Now we do have a negative 6. That means we have to deal with that negative 6 in the second column. So we're going to put a negative there. What goes into 6 and 9? 3. Now because of all the negatives, I'm going to do a quick check of my negatives and my multiplication. You could do this with every problem. I do 2x times 4a and see if that gives me the first box. 2x times 4a gives me 8ax. Good, perfect. 2x times negative 3, will that give me my top right corner? Negative 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Good, negatives are good. I'm going to do negative 3 times 4a. Does that give me my top left corner? My bottom left corner. Well, negative 3 times positive 4 is negative 12, and then there's the a on the 4. We're good there. Then to find my last box on the bottom right, I do negative 3 times negative 3. That gives me a positive 9. It all checks out, so I just write this now. If you don't write this out, you're going to lose a point for not writing it in factored form. And there we go. That's our answer. Let's do one more with 4 terms. So we're going to do number 7. And number 7 is 5x squared minus 5xy plus 10x plus minus 10y. Now I'm not going to forget this time. There is a GCF here. Not an OCF, a GCF. Thank you for correcting what I didn't want you to need. GCF. The GCF is 5. So let's divide everything by 5 and make this an easier problem. It's going to be x squared, not xo. x squared minus xy plus 2x minus 2y. So we have a GCF. So again, if you're forgetful like me, I might draw an arrow down there to tell myself, don't forget I have a 5 that I have to put on the outside. I make my box. Okay. I don't like where it is, but that's all right. Well, yeah, let's get rid of that and try again. If Mr. B was doing this, he would know how to just move the box, but you know, it's me, so. Okay, good, better. All right, top left is the first number, x squared. Bottom right is the last number, negative 2y. Watch your negatives. And then this time we don't have to do a magic x because there's already two middle terms. We don't have to worry about it. So negative xy goes here, or on the other one, it doesn't matter. And this is positive 2x. You don't have to put the plus. You can if you want. GCF on the top row. Don't take a negative out there. So that's just going to be an x. Now this is, again, a good one because it has different negatives. We're not going to take out a negative in this problem, and I'll show you why in a minute, okay? The first term isn't negative, so we don't need to worry about it here. And this is where you want to check at the end. What's the same as 2x and negative 2y? It's going to be a 2. First column is x. Now there's a negative and a negative in this column, so we can take out a negative here, okay? Because there's a negative in both of them, that's how we're going to deal with those two negatives. We're going to take it out here. Again, I'm going to check it to make sure I didn't lose a negative or mess something up. I'm going to check my top left. I'm going to do x times x, which is x squared. Good. Top right is positive x times negative y, which gives me a negative xy. That's what I want there. My bottom left corner is going to be 2 times x, which gives us positive 2x. And then my bottom right is 2 times negative y, which gives me my negative 2y. We had this 5 kind of hanging out there. Wow, I don't know what just happened. Well, look, it drew a whole line. Oh, well. So we put the 5 on the outside because that was kind of waiting there. X, now there's a plus in front of that too, so if you need to write it, write it. And then x minus y. And that's my factored form. So that's how you use the box method with trinomials and 4-term polynomials. If you have questions, you're confused, you're not sure that the box method is the right for you, maybe you want to go watch one of the other videos and see if another one makes a little more sense for you.